Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with chocolate chip pumpkin bread. That's right, if you think chocolate and pumpkin sounds like an odd pairing, that's only because you haven't had it, since it really does work incredibly well. But even if you don't add the chips, you are still going to be enjoying one of the lightest, moistest, most flavorful pumpkin breads ever. And also probably the easiest. And the first thing we'll do is mix up our dry ingredients, which include all-purpose flour, along with some salt and some baking soda. No, not baking powder, baking soda. Make sure you grab the right one. And then we'll also toss in some cinnamon, as well as some ground ginger, some freshly and finely grated nutmeg, and then last but not least, some ground clove. And once all that's in there, we will take a whisk, and we'll give this a mix until we feel like everything's evenly incorporated. And what happens if we don't? Well, really probably not that much, but it is part of the ritual. And as you might know, rituals are one of the most fun parts about cooking. But anyway, once that's been whisked together, we can move on to the wet ingredients, which is going to start with 1 can of pure pumpkin puree. Oh, and if you wanted to seed and roast and mash your own fresh pumpkin, please be my guest. But there's very little chance it'll be better than this, and a pretty good chance it'll be worse. So I'm a big fan of the can. But either way, after that, we're going to need a little touch of white sugar, plus a nice big pinch of brown sugar, followed by one of the secrets to a great quick bread, a very generous amount of vegetable oil, or a dealer's choice. And then we will finish up with a small splash of milk, which may or may not have come from a cow, followed by 2 large eggs. And believe it or not, that's it. And at this point, all we have to do is take our whisk and mix this for about a minute, or until it's completely smooth. And as usual, we will start off slow, so as not to splash everything all over the counter. But once it comes together, we can finish by whisking more enthusiastically. And once we have achieved a nice perfectly smooth mixture, we will grab our dry ingredients and dump them in, and then we'll use our whisk to gently combine everything together. And I say gently not because I'm afraid we're going to overmix this, but again for the simple fact that we don't want stuff flying out of the bowl onto the counter, which is definitely more likely to happen mixing in the dry ingredients. Which, by the way, is why some people add the wet to the dry, but not me. All right, when it comes to mixing up a batter, I like there to be a little bit of excitement. Yes, very little, but some excitement nonetheless. But either way, once that's mixed, we'll go ahead and toss in our chocolate chips, as well as the always beautiful and delicious pumpkin seeds. Then we'll go ahead and give those a quick whisk until they're evenly combined. And of course, both those additions are optional. And even though I highly recommend both, that'll be up to you. I mean, you guys are after all the steeds of whether to add chips and seeds. Oh, and speaking of horses, fun fact, horses love eating pumpkin. Oh yeah, true story. And I know this because one of my first cook jobs was at a horse racetrack. But anyway, once all that's mixed in, we will grab a spatula and we will transfer all this into a well-buttered loaf pan. Although if you're not into butter, you can just brush it with oil, and that should work out just fine. And then whenever we transfer batter into a pan like this, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. Should I tap that? And for me this time for this recipe, the answer was definitely yes. So I went ahead and gave that the old tappa, which will help bring any big bubbles up to the surface. And that's it, our pumpkin bread is now ready to transfer into the center of a 350-degree oven for about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes, or until it looks like this. Oh yeah, now that is a handsome loaf. And it looks done, but we better test it. And if we stick a skewer or toothpick right into the center, it should come out clean, which mine did. Okay, if there's a bunch of raw batter on it, just put it back in. And then what we'll do for the next 45 minutes to an hour is absolutely nothing. We will just let this cool down in the pan, at which point we can very carefully turn it out of the pan. And we'll place that on the rack, where we really should let it cool all the way down to room temp. Okay, you eat it when you want, but I think the taste and the texture are much better if this is fully cooled. And that's it. Once it has cooled enough, we can transfer that to a cutting board, and we can slice in and see how we did. And I was going to pretend I actually let mine cool all the way down before I sliced it. But as you can probably see from that little bit of chocolate smearing, I could have and probably should have let this cool a little longer. But anyway, it was fine. And it looked exactly like I hoped it would look, except for that very white, very bright pumpkin seed that we apparently cut through the middle of, that completely ruined the entire shot. And yes, I'm mostly kidding, but also kind of not. But anyway, let me break a piece off and go in for a taste, which was almost too good to describe. I mean, this pumpkin bread is so incredibly light and delicate and tender in texture that you're going to wonder how it even stays together. And yes, in case you're wondering, I did spread a little bit of chocolate on that one exposed pumpkin seed, so it wouldn't be so distracting. I know I have a problem, but it's okay because I know about it. But anyway, getting back to the texture and the taste, I could not have been more thrilled with how this came out. The combination of that chocolate with the earthy sweetness from the pumpkin and that little bit of crunch and nuttiness from the pumpkin seeds all combined to make something very, very special. And this is so good. I would tell you to make this even if it was very complicated and hard to do. But as you saw, it's not. It's basically dump stuff in a bowl, mix it up, and then bake it. And as I probably mentioned before, I'm not a big sweets guy. And I really don't make and eat too many things like this. So the fact that after I finished this first slice, I cut and plated up another one should tell you all you need to know about how great this is. And I probably could have just called this pumpkin bread, since like I said, the chocolate chips are optional. But I didn't because I was afraid people would see the thumbnail and think those chocolate chips were actually raisins. And it's been my experience that people thinking there's raisins in things is not great for traffic. So we went with chocolate chip pumpkin bread, so there would be no confusion. But whether you make yours with chocolate chips or not, this is by far the best pumpkin bread I've ever had, which is why I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.